Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. So we have a patch coming up in Hearthstone, and it's one of these that's kind of like the last one. It's not doing very much practical changes, but what it is doing is kind of like a pre-balance patch to the expansion. And honestly, I think that's great. Now, while I might not agree entirely with some of these changes, I do agree with most of them. I like doing things in this way. Preemptive balance patches rather than this might be a problem, let's release it anyway. It's on our radar, and then 6 weeks later when people are just completely fed up with ladder and whatnot, then they make balance changes. This system is great, and even though Blizzard might miss the mark, it's always a gamble to get the balance changes, preemptive or not, it's always a gamble. I appreciate that they're trying it out this way because I think it is a good system. Now, let's get to the changes. So they're changing a few more types. They're saying it's for consistency. I'm not sure if it's consistency, but I don't think the impact on the game will be too large. They're essentially nerfing the Ghostly Charger for Paladin, but not really very much. I mean, there's no beast synergy in Paladin. You're looking at just getting these off of very fringe beast creation cards from Hunter, and yeah, there's good beasts out there. The fact that this one isn't in the pool anymore really doesn't change much. So even though I had my own rant about dropping the beast tag from previous beasts and not giving dust refunds, I think with the Charger, I think we're cool. This card being a beast makes no change to the game, so it's not gonna be a beast anymore because it's a ghost, and the ghost is really cool, so it's a ghost rather than a beast. All right, that kind of makes sense, right? Yeah, someone on Twitter brought it up. Why is Bone Drake a dragon, but why is then Bone Mare nothing? And the answer is, what I came up with at least, it's the cool factor. Okay, so Bone Drake is a skeleton and a dragon, but dragons are way cooler than skeletons. So it's a dragon. Now, when you take a look at a card like Bone Mare, yes, it's a skeleton, but then it's a pony. Ponies are just not cool. In the case for Bone Mare, skeleton is cooler than pony, therefore it's not a beast. And thus for Ghostly Charger, bigger ponies are still not that cool. Ghosts, they're pretty cool. So the ghost wins out and the consistency prevails, more or less. Next up we have Ixlid, one of my favorite Druid cards ever. Combo-tastic card. It was an elemental, and after these changes it will no longer be an elemental. Does this change matter? In Constructed, no. I think it's completely irrelevant. It might matter in Arena because in Arena you might actually get some elemental synergy. Yeah, it's Druid, but it's Arena. You just pick the best cards that you're offered. And sometimes you get elemental synergy. And there's elemental discovery cards, part of the neutral set, and discovery options have a heavy weight on class cards, and Ixlid is a good class card. So this is a very, 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 very minor nerf to Druids in Arena, probably completely irrelevant, but maybe that 0.01% in power level drop just because it's not an elemental. Does it deserve a dust refund? Nah, probably not. I'm going to go with Blizzard on this one. I think that's fine. They're also changing how transform functions work. Now, this is going to seem really confusing. When I first read through it, it seemed really confusing for me. And you guys might be aware, I play Hearthstone a lot. I know quite a bit about this game, and just by reading through these, it didn't make that much sense to me. So, we look at Molten Reflection. Molten Reflection just is the same card. Okay. So then they made a list of how the transform changes will go through. So cards that are resurrected currently do and will not continue to retain any enchantments. So if you have an enchantment is maybe like a flip effect, kind of like the new Worgen cards. It could be like a discount effect. So basically what they're doing is cards in hand that are copied or in decks that are copied retain their transformation effects. So a really good way to put this is the Hunter card that came out in the last expansion, that you put it on a beast, it buffed it by +3/+3, and it added 3 copies to your deck. right? That makes sense. And then if you were playing against a priest and he had cards, Thought, Steal, Devour, Mind, whatever the case, of taking cards from your deck to his hand, those would previous to this patch, it would reset those cards. So if you played like the +3/+3 thing on like a boar, and it was like a 4/4 boar in your deck, and then the priest copied cards from your deck to their hand, before this patch, they would just be 1/1 boars. But after this patch, those would be 4/4 boars, and they would be effectively transformed. You'd copy fully the transformed version. It seems inconsequential most of the time. However, as the title suggests, the big thing here is Kingsbane Rogue. Kingsbane Rogue, it might come to flavor back and forth in standard mode. A lot of the tools that the Kingsbane Rogue requires to function have cycled out lately to Hall of Fame or to Wild, whatever the case. But the deck in Wild is really strong. When I was playing my combo Druids, when I was playing some of my crazy control decks, because I have gotten Legend and Wild, I think, 3 times in the last 6 or 7 months. I love playing Wild. Wild's great. Kingsbane Rogue is a very popular, very powerful deck in Wild mode, and there's very little that you can do as a control deck to counter it. Now, with these transformation changes, you can now somewhat effectively counter Kingsbane Rogue through the transformation change. So, how would that work? So, think about it this way. If you're playing Priest, similar case to the Hunter example that I gave, and you're copying cards from your opponent's deck. If you're playing a Control Priest versus a Kingsbane Rogue, you too can get a fully fledged Kingsbane. So if your opponent uses up their Kingsbane and it's still in their deck just for that brief moment in time, and honestly, if you're playing Control Priest, it's pretty likely that it's going to be in the deck. Sometimes Kingsbane Rogue knows if it's playing against another mill deck, it's only going to use up Kingsbane if it can put it back in the hand immediately. But if the Kingsbane Rogue is playing against a class like Priest, which has no real mill capability, at least unless you try really hard and make some garbage-ass meme deck, a lot of the time it'll just leave the Kingsbane in the deck for a turn or two. Now, if the Priest Thought Steals or copies the deck and lands on Kingsbane, the Priest is going to get a fully buffed Kingsbane, and that will allow it to go toe-to-toe with the Rogue. So it's not a huge Kingsbane nerf, but it's certainly very interesting with some of these very niche cards, and because we're having these changes, because we're having attention drawn to these kind of mechanical changes, I suspect that we're going to receive a number of cards that interact this way. I think Kingsbane, as unique as it is right now, it's probably not going to be quite as unique in the future. And honestly, I think that's great. Kingsbane is an amazing card. It's a very cool card. It's a deck-defining card, and it creates a deck that's actually very difficult to play, where good decisions lead to victories and poor decisions lead to defeats. By design, it's great, even though it's very oppressive against some archetypes. Now we can combat it a little bit better, and these mechanics, I think, in my opinion, are more intuitive and more fair than they were in the past. It will take some getting used to. You're going to play that game where you're going to encounter that situation where it's like, that shouldn't have happened. I've played Hearthstone, I've done that before. It's always with these mechanical changes where there's some weird stuff and you don't know what happened and all that. But it's going to be a little bit different this time around because things, I think, are moving into a more intuitive environment. Lastly, what I wanted to talk about here is the Shadowboxer. So Shadowboxer is moving from face healing to minion healing. This is directly a nerf. The card is substantially worse, and as a result, people who currently own Shadowboxers will be getting full dust refund if they choose to disenchant the extra copies or whatever they want. So yeah, that's pretty good. The reason that they're doing this is because the Shadowboxer is a mech, and with the recently revealed legendary magnetic mech from the upcoming Boomsday Project expansion, if you were to play Shadowboxer and this card, it would essentially heal you to full health when you'd attack with it. And that can be a bit of a problem. I understand how that's rather good, but I think they didn't need to do this. And let me explain why. This is for wild mode. I've played a lot of control decks in wild mode. I've played a lot of Reno Warlock in wild mode. And let me tell you, a lot of the time you're playing against an aggro deck, you have Reno Jackson in your hand ready for turn 6, and turn 6 never happens. You die before it, and that happens a lot. This is a 7 mana, 2-card combo. Yes, it's much better than Reno Jackson in the sense that when you do it, it'll probably clear out your opponent's board. That's certainly no joke whatsoever, right? It's certainly better than Reno Jackson, but to get to turn 7 rather than turn 6 is a pretty big difference as well, I would argue. Wild is a very high power level game mode where Priest often enough struggles direly to keep up with some of these aggro decks. So even though that combo is absolutely broken, the situation that you need to set up for it against the games that break it, well, it's not that likely. So here's why. It doesn't kill your opponent in one hit. It's not really an OTK because when it stops healing you through the lifesteal that it grants from the magnetic effect, it no longer triggers its ability. It's not an infinite loop. It's an infinite loop until you reach full health. So it's going to be, like a 5 attack guy? Let's say you're at 10 health. You magnetize the rushing, lifesteal, whatever on the Shadowboxer. You attack for 5, you heal for 5. So you're going to be at 15. And then he's going to ping for 1. So that's going to be so you do 5 damage. And then it's going to be rush damage, by the way. And then it pings for 1, and that 1 heals you and then deals another 1. So basically, you are doing 16 pings if you were at 10 HP. That's obviously very good. But it's not going to kill your opponent. It's not an infinite damage combo. So it's just a really high damage combo that probably clears the board. And the reason I think this is somewhat fair is because it really only works against aggro. Like, against a control deck, they're going to have a lot of health. They're going to have a lot of outs. A lot of the time when you start losing health, you die very quickly. Most control decks have some kind of mini combo. You're just not going to be down on health in Wild unless you're playing against an aggro deck. And against an aggro deck, a 2-card turn 7 combo is not that powerful. So what does this tell us? Is Blizzard overly concerned about it? Maybe. Or there's some pretty damn sick magnetic cards coming up. Let's hope it's that second one. For now, that's it. We'll see if there's more balance changes before, maybe even after the expansion, but I'm glad they're doing it this way. Hope you guys enjoyed my review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.